Have you ever wondered if miracles have shaped our history? We often look at the past through the lens of science and reason. We see cause and effect, battles and treaties, leaders and laws. But what if there is another layer to the story? What if, at key moments, something truly unexplainable happened? Throughout our shared journey, there are events that defy easy answers. These are moments that left people speechless, moments where the rules of our world seemed to bend. For those who witnessed them, these were not just strange occurrences. They were signs, messages from a higher power. They were miracles that offered hope when all seemed lost. These events are like fingerprints left on the pages of history, pointing to something beyond our understanding. Take, for example, the stories of saints who could reportedly heal the sick with a single touch. Or consider the tales of armies that won impossible victories after praying for divine intervention. These are not just fanciful legends. They are deeply woven into the historical records and cultural memories of entire civilizations. For centuries, people have passed down these accounts, not as mere stories, but as profound truths. They saw them as evidence that we are not alone in this vast universe, that a guiding hand might be at play in the unfolding drama of human existence. These moments challenge the very notion of what is possible. Imagine living in a time without modern medicine, where a simple fever could be a death sentence. Now, imagine hearing that someone in your village was cured of a fatal disease after a moment of intense prayer. Such an event would not just be surprising, it would be transformative. It would strengthen the faith of an entire community, giving them a powerful sense of connection to the divine. It becomes a story told to children and grandchildren, a foundational belief that shapes how they see the world and their place within it. These are the moments that logic struggles to explain away completely. And so, we are left with a fascinating puzzle. Were these events simply coincidences? Were they exaggerations that grew over time? Or were they genuine miracles, moments where faith opened a door to the impossible? The answer often depends on what you are willing to believe. But regardless of their origin, the impact of these events is undeniable. They inspired people, united communities, and gave meaning to suffering. They showed that even in the darkest of times, there is always room for hope, for mystery, and for the extraordinary. The belief in miracles helped our ancestors navigate a world full of uncertainty. One of the most astonishing events of the 20th century happened in a small town in Portugal. In 1917, in a place called Fatima, 3 young shepherd children claimed they had seen visions of the Virgin Mary. They said she had promised a great miracle would occur on October 13th, so that all might believe. The news spread like wildfire. On that day, despite a cold, driving rain, a massive crowd gathered. Estimates range from 30,000 to 100,000 people. There were believers, skeptics, journalists, and scientists, all waiting to see if the children's prophecy would come true. They stood in the mud, soaked to the bone, their eyes fixed on the sky. Suddenly, the rain stopped. The dark clouds parted, and the sun appeared as a spinning silver disc. Witnesses said it was not blinding to the eye. Then it began to dance. It trembled, whirled, and zigzagged across the sky, casting brilliant colors across the landscape and the crowd. People fell to their knees, weeping and praying. They were terrified and mesmerized all at once. For about 10 minutes, this celestial spectacle continued, a silent cosmic ballet for an audience of thousands. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sun returned to its normal place in the sky, and everything seemed ordinary again. But something truly strange had happened. People who had been drenched by the rain discovered that their clothes were completely dry. The muddy ground they stood on was also dry. This event, which became known as the Miracle of the Sun, was reported in newspapers across the country. Even secular anti-religious journalists who were there to debunk the story wrote about the sun's bizarre behavior. They had no explanation. Scientists have tried to explain it as a mass hallucination, a rare weather phenomenon, or some other natural event. Yet, none of the explanations fully account for what so many people claim to have seen at the exact same time. For the people of Fatima, and for believers around the world, the event was undeniable proof of the divine. It transformed a small rural village into one of the most important Catholic pilgrimage sites in the world. The faith of those who were there was solidified forever. It was a moment that transcended the ordinary, a public spectacle that seemed to confirm that the heavens were watching. The story of the dancing sun continues to inspire millions, a powerful reminder that sometimes what we see with our own eyes is more incredible than anything we could ever imagine. It remains a profound mystery, a day when the sun itself seemed to bow to a higher power. History is filled with stories of battles won against impossible odds, but few are as strange as the one that occurred in ancient Britain. Around the year 430 AD, a small group of newly converted British Christians found themselves facing a much larger army of Picts and Saxons. They were outnumbered and outmatched. Their leaders, Germanus and Lupus, were not generals, they were bishops. They had no military strategy, no secret weapons, and very little hope of survival. As the enemy army advanced, ready for an easy victory, Germanus had an idea. It was not a plan for a counterattack, but a call to faith. He instructed his small, terrified group of soldiers to do something completely unexpected. Instead of drawing their swords, he told them to prepare their voices. As the invaders charged toward them, Germanus shouted, "Alleluia," 3 times. His followers, filled with a sudden surge of courage, roared the word back in unison. Their voices echoed through the valley, amplified by the surrounding hills. The sound was so loud, so powerful, and so unexpected that it struck terror into the hearts of the advancing enemy. They had been expecting the clash of steel, not a thunderous chorus of praise. The invading army froze in its tracks. They looked around, confused and frightened, believing they were surrounded by a massive, unseen force. The echo made it sound as if the very mountains were shouting back at them. In their panic, they dropped their weapons and fled. They scrambled over each other to escape, many drowning as they tried to cross a nearby river. The British Christians watched in amazement as their enemies defeated themselves without a single sword being lifted. They had won a complete victory, not through violence, but through a single, powerful word of faith. This event became known as the Alleluia victory. For the early Christian community in Britain, it was a clear and powerful sign of God's protection. It showed them that their faith was a shield more powerful than any weapon. The story was told and retold, inspiring generations to believe that even when faced with overwhelming odds, faith could create a path to deliverance. It wasn't about military might. It was about the power of belief to change reality. The Alleluia victory remains a testament to the idea that sometimes the most unconventional solutions are the most effective, especially when they are fueled by unwavering faith. These events, separated by centuries and continents, share a common thread. They are moments where the impossible seemed to happen, and faith provided the only explanation that made sense. The miracle of the sun at Fatima, the Alleluia victory in Britain. These are not just historical footnotes. They became cornerstones of belief for millions of people. They offered tangible proof that there is more to our world than what we can see and measure. For the communities that experienced them, these miracles were not abstract concepts. They were lived realities that reshaped their destinies and strengthened their spiritual resolve. The impact of these miracles echoes through time. Churches were built, pilgrimages were started, and cultural traditions were formed around these extraordinary moments. They gave people a sense of identity and purpose, uniting them under a shared belief in divine intervention. When life was hard, when famine, plague, or war threatened their existence, these stories served as powerful reminders of hope. They taught that divine help was possible, that prayers could be answered, and that faith had the power to overcome even the most daunting challenges. This belief provided comfort, courage, and a deep sense of meaning in a world that often seemed chaotic and unjust. Today we live in a world dominated by science and technology. We have explanations for weather patterns, for diseases, and for the movements of the stars. It can be easy to dismiss these historical accounts as folklore or mass delusion. We search for logical causes, for scientific principles that can explain away the mystery. Yet, these stories persist. They hold a power that science cannot easily diminish. They speak to a deep human need to believe in something greater than ourselves, to find meaning in the unexplained, and to see a pattern in the chaos of history. And so we are left with a profound question. Is faith simply a way to explain what we do not yet understand? Or is it a different way of seeing altogether? A lens that allows us to perceive a deeper reality? Perhaps the true miracle is not the dancing sun or the victory won by a song. Perhaps the true miracle is faith itself, the remarkable human capacity to believe in the unseen, to find hope in the face of despair, and to see the hand of the divine in the unfolding story of our world. What do you think? Can faith help us find meaning where logic alone falls short?